Hi, Ethan. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Do you mind giving us a short introduction about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Ethan Hansen. I am the host and the creator of Quantum Computing Now, which is a quantum computing podcast that goes over a lot of different subjects. Mostly, I do interviews with people, and what I try to do is I try to learn something from each of the people. So things that we've covered in the past include quantum error correction, superconducting qubits, building enterprise quantum software, like myths surrounding quantum computing. So yeah, it's a broad uh, broad topic podcast. I'm normally on the interviewing end rather than the being interviewed end. Um,
So
and
this,
yeah, so I yeah I am heading off to college this fall. I'm actually currently packing and leaving in like 3 days. So, yeah, I will be going to Case Western Reserve University studying computer science. That's sort of where my interests lie in the more algorithm side of quantum computing. Yeah, I think that's a good overview of who I am.
Great. Thank you so much. On behalf of community, we really appreciate this opportunity to educate fellow quantum workers. Speaking of community, allow me to talk to you a bit about who we are and what we represent. Community is a student-led nonprofit organization that aims to provide and educate emerging technologies such as quantum computing to the youth. Some examples of this are creating courses, bringing guest speakers such as yourself, and hosting workshops and events as a free resource to anyone and everyone. I'm a content creator at Community, and I make weekly newsletters to educate those on the latest quantum news. That being said, it's great to have someone who's an emerging quantum student to speak with us today, as many of our audiences are. Without further ado, let's get started. So I had a bit of like personal questions for you, like for
Mhm.
example, what's an app that you can't live without?
Yeah, so two ways that I could take this. Literally, there's an app on my phone called Xstrip, which is used for continuous glucose monitoring. So I have type 1 diabetes. So I literally cannot live without that glucose monitoring. Um, and I guess more, how you're probably meaning it, which is like an app I use all the time, is Signal, which is rather than using standard SMS and like text messaging, I use Signal because it is end-to-end encrypted. And free open source software. So yeah, if you're not using Signal, check out Signal messaging.
Okay, great. And what is your favorite book and why?
So this is hard. There are a lot of great books, and it's changed over the years. I think that currently my favorite book is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I'm really into like political dystopia novels. So not dystopia where it's like uh, zombie apocalypse has ravaged the world and everybody is fighting to survive, but rather like government has gotten too powerful, or maybe even organizations have gotten too powerful, and they're suppressing people in interesting ways. So other examples would be like 1984 by George Orwell is a really good one, and Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. So yeah, but I think Brave New World is my favorite out of those.
That sounds pretty interesting. Have you read any quantum computing books over the years?
I have. I've read a couple. I've read Nielsen and Chuang once. I think I read it too early though. But the quantum computing and quantum information, the Mike and Ike book that everyone talks about is what I'm referring to there. And I think a lot of it went over my head because um, a lot of people say you can just jump into that one. I didn't really feel that way. I felt like I should have had a bit more background information before going into that one. So I'm going to reread that one. It's on my list to go back to.
It's very interesting. What does a productive day look like for you?
So that changes depending on whether I'm in school or not. Uh, for the past like year and a half, I've been working slash interning. So a productive day looks like getting up, getting online, working for a bit, and at work, working on getting some content creation done, maybe finishing up a podcast episode, and then after work, I live on a farm, so going outside, doing some chores, um, and finishing up with some reading probably, and then maybe getting to emails if I've got time.
That is pretty interesting. Is there someone or something that you owe all this to, like finding your passion and things like that?
For finding my passion, um, I don't know that there's a specific person I can point to or something. Um, I've been self-taught a lot, and I maybe my grandmother who, yeah, my grandmother got me subscriptions to Popular Science and Popular Mechanics, and it was in one of those magazines that I first heard about quantum computing. So maybe that. But I've done a lot of self-teaching on YouTube, the internet. So, yeah, let's go with the internet. I owe a lot of my success to the internet.
So self-teaching for quantum computing sounds pretty difficult. How was that process for you?
Well, the process you say was, which maybe isn't the correct, the
Continuing
correct,
process.
yeah. Yeah, it's definitely still ongoing. I think that it's possible. It's definitely difficult. And the biggest thing that I've run into is that there's sort of a lot of beginner resources and there's a lot of advanced resources, right? You can always jump into Qiskit tutorials and start doing whatever in there, coding quantum Pong. And then you can, once you have a lot of information and knowledge, you can read papers on archive or wherever, and you can know approximately what's going on. It might take you a little bit longer to read them just because technical papers are often dense. But like the middle section there, where you have to bridge the gap going from this basic knowledge to like middle knowledge to advanced knowledge, that middle part is has been the hardest. And so, yeah, that is something that if you are going to be trying to self-teach quantum computing, you should be aware about that. It's often you can often get stuck, I think, in the basic knowledge, which isn't necessarily the worst. Everyone, I think, should have a little bit of basic knowledge about quantum computing. But if you want to advance beyond that, it's going to be difficult, and there's not a lot of good resources out there.
I see. Do you have any resources that you would specifically recommend?
None off the top of my head. I have a list. That maybe I can send you, and you can put a couple in the show notes or description or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
About your podcast, can you talk a little bit about how you started it and where you see it going?
Yeah. So I started the podcast sort of as a way to document my learning, my journey, getting into quantum computing, and so that other people would have that resource. The other consideration that went into this was I like podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I couldn't find one that was uploading regularly about quantum computing, or that seemed active. I'm not the first quantum computing podcast. I believe that goes to Meet the Mechanics. But by the time that I got into it, it had been like 6 months since they had published an episode. So I decided, well, if I make a podcast and I'm the only quantum computing podcast, I'm automatically the worst quantum computing or best quantum computing podcast. Yeah, so I decided to go ahead and do that. at first I was just recording on my phone,
Mhm.
and I didn't have any like equipment. A lot of the first episodes are a little bit rambly, and but because they've been around the longest, they're the most popular ones, which I feel like I might need to go back and revisit some of them. But yeah, so I got started just sort of like, I don't know, the best way to start something is just to start. So I didn't have a big plan. I just looked into like, well, how do you make a podcast? How do you get your podcast out there? Found a couple tools for that and just went for it. And I've always been, at least I've tried to be very open with the fact that I am not an expert. I try to bring on experts who
Mhm.
I talk to, but I am very much a beginner and I don't know what I'm talking about. Take everything that I say with a large chunk of salt. Um, but I'm trying to, give some more resources to the community.
Mhm.
And so for your second part of the question there, which was like, where do I see this going? So I I don't necessarily know that I see it going anywhere other than where it is right now. Like, a couple hundred people who listen to it on a fairly regular basis. Um, it being just sort of there in the background. I don't have plans to ever monetize the podcast or put it behind a paywall. Um, and it's just going to be a free resource that is there for the community. I would love to, as I get more knowledge,
Mhm.
make more of the episodes that are like just me really doing a deep dive into a subject. Um, but yeah, what I've got right now, I think is a good format that people enjoy. And so yeah, don't have any super big plans to change anything coming up.
Yeah, I think the podcast is really cool, and I think it's really great that this is kind of your own little project, and you don't have, well, of course you have hopes for it, but it's just for you. I think that's really respectable. Do you have a favorite episode on your own podcast, Quantum Computing Now?
Yeah, I've gotten asked this before,
Mhm.
and I haven't really had a good answer. So maybe let's see if I can give you a better one that I've given in the past. Um, Recently, I did like an April Fool's Day episode called the Quantum Encabulator, which is a spoof off of a really old technical practical joke called the Turbo Encabulator, where this guy gets up and just spouts a bunch of technical jargon that doesn't mean anything, and he makes it sound like it's very important, and this is big news and big work that we are working on here at, I think, General Motors. And a lot of people like fell for it, and so I did the quantum version of that, just threw a bunch of quantum jargon out there, and I thought that that was really great. But it's one of my worst performing episodes because it's only like 3 minutes long, and
Uh,
so other people obviously did think it was as funny as I did. But I really enjoyed making that episode, and I think that you some of the more the not April Fool's Day episodes that I really enjoyed
mhm.
recently have been with Jack Cerrone, um, who he's got like a kind of similar story to me, a little bit different path, but it was cool to talk to him. And then I did one with John Scarrett on busting quantum myths.
Mhm.
That one was a lot of fun, and I think a good resource because there is a lot of quantum hype and myths out there that need to be combated.
Yeah, it may be too hard to pick one favorite episode out of all of them. So I
Yeah,
enjoyed making all of them.
yeah, definitely.
Um, so as you are still pretty young, 19 years old, I believe, correct me if
Yep.
I'm where do you see yourself in the quantum computing industry? Do you have any hopes right now about that?
Yeah. So see myself, you mean like in the future? Like where do you see
Yeah,
yourself in
like
5 years sort of thing?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the job in 5 years, I would love to be working for a quantum computing company
Mm-hmm.
and working on quantum algorithm development or quantum software development. I've always liked computers and tinkering and that sort of stuff. So merging that with quantum computing, I'm not super into the actual manufacture or the physical qubits. But I'm still interested enough that I could work on that and be happy. So I think that I don't see myself I don't see myself being a CEO or starting my own company anytime soon. But maybe the field grows enough that in the future I'm able to turn quantum computing now into a full-time thing, which would
Mm-hmm.
be pretty awesome. Doing quantum education would be super cool. But yeah, quantum education or quantum algorithms development would be, I guess, my goals for the future.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Um, well, that wraps up my questions for you, except if you had an end note on your podcast, any general thoughts you have on quantum computing or something you wanted to say to the audience.
Yeah. So how I always wrap up my podcasts is with I ask every guest the same three questions. Those are, what do you see as the biggest promise in quantum computing, the biggest problem in quantum computing, and then where can I find more about you? So I guess I'll go through and I'll answer those right here.
Yeah.
um, so the biggest problem in quantum computing, and what I have heard from guest after guest who has come through the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
the themes are that we need to have better quantum education. In fact, there was just an article posted that I saw saying that quantum computing's next big challenge is finding a quantum computing workforce. So
Mm-hmm.
doing stuff with community is great, and just getting more resources out there for people, especially like if anyone is listening to this and has the expert knowledge to go through and take it down just one notch and write things for people who know what a bra and a ket are. They know what superconducting qubits are. They know approximately how Shor's algorithm works, right? They've got the basics down. They want to go to the next level. They want to start learning like the medium level stuff, but they don't want to be reading archive papers yet. If you can make resources like that, there's a need for that. And if you find resources like that, please let me know. I've got all my contact information on my
Mm-hmm.
podcast. Let me know, and I will be happy to amplify that and share it. So yeah, that's the first big problem. And then the other big problem is if you're working, if you unlike me plan to work on the physical qubits,
Mm-hmm.
um, bringing coherence times up and error rates down are the other things that people say are the biggest problems. And so those are big problems, right? There's no easy, obvious solution to any of those. But that's kind of what makes the field so cool and exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would say don't listen to the people who say that quantum computing is never going to happen, or that it's just a fad, anything like that. I think that they're wrong,
Yeah.
and we will see quantum computing reach this this quantum advantage area where we get practical results, and not just quantum supremacy. And so then for the promises, right? If quantum computing is going to happen, what is it going to do? And I think that it's really hard to say, right? Like you couldn't have predicted that because we were able to miniaturize transistors, we would get the internet, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and the thing is, like, I think so. The prediction that I will put out right now is that the biggest application of quantum computing, many years down the line, 20, 30, maybe even 40 years, is going to be in the entertainment field somewhere, right? Like transistors are used for gaming and for watching Netflix and YouTube. That is like that is their purpose. I think that qubits are going to be the same way. I don't know what that will be, but that's my bold prediction, and we can circle back to this in 20 years and see if I'm right.
That's actually a
Uh,
really interesting prediction because I've never heard anybody say like it'll be prominent in the entertainment area. I've heard about automobile, and like military relations, things like that, but not entertainment. Sorry, continue.
yeah, no, that's true. Like it's definitely. I mean, those are the things that everyone thinks about
Hmm.
because that's sort of what really matters at the end of the day. But a lot of our big advancements as a society have come as spin-offs of other things, right? Like especially like NASA. Obviously, there's a real purpose there, but like tennis shoes, the basic technology behind that were developed by NASA. Polarized sunglasses. In, in any case, I think that we're going to see like unexpected things, and I think that the entertainment industry is going to be the biggest benefactor many years down the line. And so yeah, then the last question that I always ask my guests is, where can people find out more about you and what you're working on? And so if you want to find out more about me and what I'm working on, you can follow me on minds.com. That's like minds.com at one Ethan Hansen. You can reach out to me via email if you've got questions, anything like that. One Ethan Hansen at protonmail.com. And you can find my podcast, which is Quantum Computing Now. If you search it up, it should be the first result. And sort of the hub, if you don't use Apple or one of the major podcast sites. So you can go to anchor.fm/quantum computing now, all lowercase, all like no spaces. You'll get my homepage, and you can find links to all the different podcatcher sites.
Great. Thank you so much. And this wraps up our interview. Thank you, Ethan, again. This was a great opportunity and very entertaining. And make sure to check out Quantum Computing Now, all that is viewing. Thank you so much. Have a great day.